We'd appreciate it if anyone hearing this broadcast would communicate with us, as we are very anxious to know how far the broadcast is reaching and how it is being received. While we're waiting for the returns to come in over the telephone, direct from the Post and Sun, I'll give you the list of offices in today's presidential election. Here they are. Some 30 million Americans are electing a president of the United States, a vice president, 34 United States senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives, governors of 34 states, and thousands of minor offices, county judges, and officials. Okay, those are the offices to be filled. And here are the 7 complete presidential tickets that are being voted on. Republican, Warren G. Harding and Calvin Coolidge. Democratic, James M. Cox.
This is the 7th round. They're up. Dempsey came into Sonny.
Application filed February 23, 1927. Serial number 170,366. The present invention is directed to improvements in purses. The primary object of the invention is to provide an article of this character which is to be made wholly from suitable leather, the construction being such that the use of metallic trims and fasteners are eliminated in order that the purse cannot be injured by breakage or cause wear upon the clothes of the user. Another object of the invention is to provide a purse so constructed that it can be conveniently opened or unfolded to permit convenient access to the contents, and when unfolded or closed will be held against accidental opening. In the accompanied drawing, Figure 1 is a perspective view of the purse showing the same in its open position. Figure 2 is a longitudinal sectional view showing the purse in its open or unfolded position. Figure 3 is a transverse sectional view through the purse when folded. The purse comprises a tray, section 1, having a wall in which extends around the sides and ends of said tray. Said wall having its edge turned inwardly and stitched as if to provide a continuous head, the purpose of which will appear later. Formed integral with the bottom of the bag and hinged connected thereto by the visible joint 5 is a section 6 having its side wall stitched as at 7 to the side wall to the section 9, the respective side walls being turned inwardly as at 10. A partition is provided and occupies a position between the section 6 and 9 and has its side edges stitched to the inturned edges to the respective sections. In this manner, compartments 12 and 13 are provided, said partition having its wired edge provided with an integral flap 14, and serves to normally close the open end of the compartment 13. By turning the respective edges of the sections 6 and 9 inwardly, A groove, 15, is formed so that when the sections are folded within the confines of the tray 1, the bead carried by the wall of said tray will enter said groove, and thus retain the sections and tray against accidental opening. A tab, 16, is secured between the sections 6 and 9 at the rear thereof, and serves as a linger hold to permit the sections to be readily unfolded. The compartment 12 is so arranged that when the purse is opened, coins in said compartment pass therefrom and will slide upon the tray. While the compartment is particularly designed for containing paper currency, it will be of course understood that coins may be placed therein if desired. The entire purse is formed from suitable leather and may be ornamented or finished in any manner desired. Having thus described the invention, we claim a purse comprising a tray including a sidewall, said sidewall having its ends trimmed with a continuous bead, a section flexibly connected to the tray, a second section, the sections defining compartments, said sections having walls formed with inturned edges capable of being stitched to each other to provide a groove between the sections capable of engaging said bead when the sections are confined within the wall of the tray. In testimony whereof we affix our signatures, Earl F. Dunn and Enoch Muhlestein. I'm here at my great-grandparents' confectionery shop in Silver City, Utah. I'm not quite sure what the name of the shop was called. I would like to think that it's called Silver City Candies. Something simple like that, but I'm not sure what it was called. I like to think that Mr. and Mrs. Muhlestein got a lot of pleasure out of serving the families and the children of Silver City their favorite confectionery treats, their favorite sodas, their favorite shakes, their favorite ice creams, their favorite candies. I'm sure that they gained a lot of pleasure in doing such a thing. I also like to think that this place was a very popular place, I would imagine, after the school bell rang. The school kids of Silver City, that the school bell rings, and as normal kids, they can't wait to get out of school and get on their way and like, hey, let's go hit this candy store. Let's go get our favorite treats. Let's go get some candy. Let's go get some chocolate, some ice cream. Let's get our after-school snacks on. This place was extremely popular, extremely busy during the school week with all the school children getting out of school and doing the things that school kids do. I'm sure that Jennie Muhlestein was just busy as a bee behind these bars here, helping all the kids, lined up here, getting everyone set up with their favorite after-school snack. I'm sure of it. I'm sure that the kids all showed up with all of their allowance money, whatever it is these days that the kids got for money from their parents. I'm sure they blew it all at this candy store, and that's a great thought to think about. On Saturdays, on a hot Saturday, I like to think that the families of Silver City would come here to cool off, get their kids their favorite treat, give mom and dad a little bit of downtime while the kids indulged their sweet tooth cravings. While Mrs. Muhlestein over here, she was taking care of the kids' sweet tooth. The dads were making conversation with Enoch Muhlestein about the topics of the day, news articles of the day. I'm sure that they were talking about things like that. And, world news came up. I'm sure they talked about national issues, local issues, obviously mining issues. This place is a huge mining town. Talked about mining issues, and, things like that came up on a regular basis while the men were over here waiting for their kids to finish up their confectionery treats. Now, speaking of the news of the day, I picked up a newspaper here that shows This is from 1918, and it's 2 years ago, talking about the total solar eclipse that went over America. June 8th, 1918. This newspaper was just sitting here in the shop, and I decided to pick it up and read it, and found some very interesting things, written in the newspaper. Let me just kind of go over those with you. It talked about the flu epidemic that hit in 1918, and the Spanish influenza epidemic is what it's referring to. And let me just kind of read a few things here. It says, not all health officials were agreed as to how the epidemic should be handled. The state health department ordered to close all public places was absolutely ridiculous and absurd. Such an action can be merely due to hysteria for a disease for no more threatening than the measles, said Salt Lake Health Director Samuel G. Paul. But by the time the flu had run its course, thousands of Utahns were dead, about 4% of all those who contracted the disease. Utah was third behind Colorado and Pennsylvania in the rate of deaths. Twyla Peck recalls the outbreak in the Tintic mining district, which is just right around here. Her father was stricken and her mother nursed him back to health. Other family members escaped, but she remembers looking through a neighbor's window to see a young mother with her infant both laid out in the living room awaiting burial. We had to play by ourselves, and if we went anywhere, we wore masks, Peck said. As it became apparent the epidemic was going to leave no Utah community untouched, local officials set down stringent rules. Stricken homes had to display large quarantine signs. Gauze masks provided by the health department were to be worn in the sick room, and when in public, streetcar conductors were instructed to limit the number of riders. Stores couldn't hold sales, and funeral services were limited to half an hour, later reduced to 15 minutes. And no more than 3 vehicles could accompany the hearse to a burial place. LDS Church President Joseph Fielding Smith died in November 1918, and his funeral was so restricted to a handful of family members. As conditions worsened, the rules were more vigorously enforced. A barber who refused to wear a mask was fined $10. Police arrested the proprietor of a soft drink establishment at 547 West, 200 South, along with 7 card-playing customers. A farewell party for one Salt Laker was raided, and all 16 present would have been nabbed if 5 had not bolted out the back door. The city put on 100 extra officers to enforce the flu rules. A local newspaper reporter commented on the eerie sense of desertion on downtown Salt Lake streets. Along 8 blocks of Main Street, he spotted 1 human wearing a mask, a guard checking business doors, and 2 black cats. But the ban on public assemblies was hard to enforce when the news of November 11 armistice ending the war was announced. People went mad in the streets of Utah's communities. Restrictions or no, health officials tried to cancel parades, but city officials insisted. Influenza cases were on the decline anyway, they argued. After the happy chaos of Armistice Day, flu had took hold again, and the dispensations that had been allowed as the disease declined were replaced with even tougher guidelines. The nursing shortage was so acute, the Red Cross asked local businesses to allow employees to have a day off if they would volunteer at hospitals during the night. Whiskey, considered one of the more effective remedies, was hard to come by. The states were then in process of ratifying the 18th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, allowing alcohol. Liquor was contraband, but some officials released whiskey to medical personnel for use as medicine. One Ogden man who went to court inebriated tried to convince the judge he was only trying to fend off the influenza. But the judge decided the dosage was overlarge and sentenced the man to a $50 fine or 30 days in jail. Liquor aside, the usual treatment was bed rest in a cool room, plenty of liquids, and hot packs to break up chest congestion. Vicks VapoRub was in such demand across the country that it became hard to find. Dr. Kilmer's swamp root was offered as a curative for the kidneys after an attack of the grip. And Etonic could help millions suffering the after effects of flu by removing acidity and poisons, its makers advertised. Panguitch, the last Utah town to be struck, held out until a returning soldier brought the virus home with him and shared it with others at a homecoming party. Even the small community of Escalante reported 200 cases at one point. In Blanding, the local store owner was stricken and his family made the key available to needy shoppers who promised to take only what they needed and pay for it when he was up and about again. Everywhere, church members and community groups all rallied to help one another through the height of the epidemic. Ogden on Park City tried to confine the disease by requiring that anyone entering their towns have a certificate signed by a doctor assuring that they showed no signs of flu. Railroads were warned not to accept passengers who had such certificate, and masks were to be worn by those who were allowed in. State Health Director T.B. Beatty huffed off to Ogden to plead for a more rational approach. But after a meeting with government and health officials, he returned to Salt Lake with nothing accomplished. The epidemic played hob with the 1918 fall elections as would-be officials were stymied by their inability to meet with voters. Many simply quit campaigning. Particularly hard hit were Indian reservations. An estimated 2,000 Navajo Indians in southern Utah and northern Arizona died, and 62 deaths were recorded on the Uintah Reservation, including Ute Chief Atchee. In the Four Corners states, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, 3,293 American Indians died. Their natural outdoor lives that exposed them to the elements, along with the failure to understand health precautions, contributed to that rate. This is interesting. A solar eclipse earlier that summer was blamed by many Indians who saw it as an omen of a challenging time to come. Some white people, on the other hand, tended to blame the epidemic on the smoke and fumes generated by the war. Christmas 1918 gave the epidemic a fresh start as groups gathered to celebrate the holiday in Salt Lake City. 106 new cases were reported, with 46 in Ogden. In January, the return of the 145th Light Field Artillery Regiment, composed primarily of Utah boys, was another temptation for people to gather. The regiment had seen no action, although it had been in France. Its only casualties were 14 flu-related deaths. But Utahns were caught up in the post-war fever, and despite the discouragement from health officials, they again lined streets in Ogden, Logan, and Salt Lake City to greet the returning warriors. A new outbreak of the flu followed within a few days. In the spring of 1919, the epidemic began to wind down, although there was another less lethal surge of the disease that winter. From September 1918 to June 1919, Utah registered 2,343 deaths from flu. In 1919, the state had the second highest death rate from the disease in the country, with 180.2 deaths per 100,000 population. The only state that exceeded that rate was South Carolina, with 189.3. Now, it's interesting they comment on the solar eclipse as being an omen of this flu epidemic and things. And, you know, I heard scientists talking about they said that the next total solar eclipse that transverses the continental United States will be in the year 2017. Now that's, 99 years away. That's an interesting thing. Anyway, the total solar eclipse being blamed on the Spanish influenza. I think it's a fascinating thing. So, through the magic of time travel and technology, I have access to a magic newspaper here, as you can see, that will give us a glimpse as to what that eclipse looked like on June 8th, 1918. And you can imagine, being in person to see that eclipse happening. That, I'm sure the people were completely thrilled and blown away at how awesome that is. The eclipse in 2017 was equally
is awesome. And from what I saw, the 2017 eclipse, it was amazing. And oh yeah, so through the power of technology and time travel, enjoy newspaper clip here.
Sunday, September 24, 2017. Over the past 97 years, this city, Silver City, Utah, has been a city of mystery, a city where family legends were born and passed from generation to generation. The harsh reality of history and being left to the battering forces of nature, this once thriving mining town has returned to its elements. It is with much gratitude that we give back a small token of appreciation and a tribute to the city in which we are forever rooted. We give our thanks to Jesse Knight and his industrious will to make the town thrive as a leading mining town of its time. Also, as descendants of Enoch and Jennie Muhlestein, we are forever thankful for their perseverance, for their strength of character, and for creating a foundation and family history to be proud of. To the many unnamed associates of these predecessors, we give our thanks for being great influential forces in their lives. Thank you, Daniel Jesse Muhlestein and family. What we're leaving in the box here is a 2017 American Silver Eagle, kind of fitting, and that this is once a silver mining town. And we're going to bury it here for as long as it can last as a tribute to this town.